Okay. Hey guys, it's your boy Asher. Welcome back to How to Live with Yourself, a guide by Passionate About Ponies. I know it's been a little bit. I had a whole lot of stuff going on in my life. You know how it is, guys. Really sorry about that. And it's currently 3:29 a.m. in the morning, and I have school tomorrow, and I'm crashing out. But I'm gonna get this to you guys. I'm gonna get it. We're gonna grind. We're on the grind. Okay. Tom was bewildered. What the fuck was that? Theseus grabbed his hand, pulled him quickly away from the door. Some sort of lizard man screamed at me. I don't think he's happy that we're here. A what screamed at you? Tom questioned as Theseus dragged him behind something. Then he heard the door open again. Wait, what? I'm making up words, guys. Then he heard the door open, and something walked in, screaming incomprehensible gibberish. Do you have any idea what he's saying? Theseus asked. No, it sounds like nonsense to me, Tom replied. Theseus, what's going on? Lizardman is angry at us, Theseus answered. Keep up. He raised his voice and addressed the apparent lizard man. Hey man, we didn't mean to intrude or anything. We're just lost. If you can direct us to the exit, that would be great. There was a bang, and Tom felt a small piece of debris hit his skin. That's incorrect grammar, but okay. Does he have a gun? Oh, wait. There was a bang, and Tom's small piece of debris hit his skin. Does he have a gun? He asked, alarmed. If it still counts as a gun, if it's shooting glowing projectiles, then yes, Theseus answered. Then there was another bang, and one of the containers next to them must have slipped open, as several objects spilled onto Tom's lap. So the lizard dude doesn't speak English, and he's shooting unknown destructive projectiles at us, Tom summarized. Not only does he not speak English, Theseus said, he's not speaking any language I've heard ever before. What the fuck was the point of having me learn 10 different languages if they didn't teach me how to communicate with hostile lizard people? You can speak how many languages? Tom gaped. Technically, only 9, Theseus clarified. I can't physically make the sounds to speak Ender. You know what? We'll come back to that later, Tom stated, as something else blew apart near them. He picked up a heavy round object from his lap and checked his balance. How tall is he? 5'4", maybe? Theseus guessed. Why does it matter? Shh, Tom demanded. He listened and threw the assailant walking around and yelling. Shh, Tom demanded. He listened as their assailant walked around yelling. After a few moments, Tom had all the information he needed. He lobbed the object over their cover. A satisfying thunk and thud rewarded him. Theseus was silent for a moment, likely peering over to see what happened. Dude, did you just hit him in the head without even seeing him? He sounded extremely impressed. Tom grinned. You told me how tall he was, and it wasn't hard to triangulate where he was standing based on his yapping. I used sound to figure out where things are all the time. As for the accurate throw, you learned a few things growing up with superheroes. Damn, Theseus said appreciatively. Do you think you killed him? I hope not, Tom answered, chewing on his lip. Can you check? Probably should, yeah, Theseus' footsteps echoed as he left their cover and walked over to their former attacker. He's breathing, and there's no blood or a dent in his head or anything. Should we do something in case he wakes up? We don't want him sounding an alarm, seeing something more people after us. Yeah, if a head injury isn't serious, people usually wake up pretty quick, Tom agreed. What if we tie him up and leave him by the door? That way someone will find him the next time they enter the room. He pushed the various fallen objects away from himself and stood. Do you think he's a guard for this place. I just found what I think are handcuffs while I patted him down. So something like that, Theseus agreed. I guess they don't want people stealing whatever all this shit is in here. Oh, I'll cut him to the pole. I'll cuff him to the pole over here. Tom heard Theseus drag the guard across the floor in 2 clicks from the handcuffs. Theseus turned and walked back towards him. Before his footsteps paused. Huh, would this work for you? It must have fallen out of that crate. It looks like a cane to me. Tom felt Theseus push something into his hand, examining it. It did indeed feel like a cane, even including a handle and being a good length for his height. That'll work perfectly. Nice find. I took his gun belt and gun too, Theseus announced. I'm really questioning grammar here, but whatever. I'm a lot better with a sword, but I don't think a sword would do any good against someone with another one of these. Theseus paused, likely examining the gun. I've never seen anything like this before. There's quite a few buttons. I'm not sure how to work it. Should we be carrying around something we don't know how to work that shoots unknown, likely deadly projectiles? Tom questioned. I don't want to end up killing someone or blowing ourselves up. If you're worried about me misfiring it, I'll keep it holstered, Theseus reassured. I don't want to kill anyone either. I'll only put it out if it's an emergency, and I won't shoot at anything alive. I'm mostly thinking we can bluff our way out of situations with it. The guard must have woken up then as the sound of his yelling started up again. Tom flipped him the middle finger with his free hand. Fuck you too, dude. You attacked first. Let's get out of here, Theseus suggested. Do you need to hold my hand again? Tom shook his head. Nah, the cane's enough for now. I can follow your voice and footsteps easily. Cool. Out we go! Theseus headed for the door, and Tom followed, sweeping his new cane in front of him in familiar motions. Theseus began describing their surroundings. We're outside. There are more buildings like the ones we just left. The door shut behind him. There's a wall and... oh shit! More guards! Hide! Tom found himself suddenly being pulled along. I don't appreciate you dragging me around, he complained as he was encouraged to duck behind something. Sorry, Theseus apologized in a whisper. We need to move fast, or the guards would have seen us. There are people patrolling everywhere, and none of them are human. More lizard people? Tom asked, copying Theseus' volume. No, they're all different, Theseus answered. I see at least 6 different types. They all look weird. I think that person has antennas. They're all armed with the same weapon I stole off of Lizard Man. Can you fly us away? Tom asked. I could fly myself away, but I couldn't carry you, Theseus explained. If we make it out to the wall, I can fly to the top and pull you over. We just have to get out without being shot. Could we create a distraction? Tom suggested. Theseus hummed in thought. If I shoot something, they'll all run over and look, right? Maybe, Tom asked. I don't have a better idea, so you might as well try it. Alright. The holster rustled as Theseus withdrew the weapon. I still don't know how to work this thing, so I'm going to point it away from us and push buttons until something happens. Tom ducked and covered. Wow. Grammar. This was a good choice, as a moment later something exploded several dozen feet to his left. It must have lit up the area as his eyes peeked up a sudden increase in brightness before it almost immediately died back down. Huh, I didn't expect that, he admitted. It didn't do that when the Lizard Man used it. Yeah, no shit, Tom agreed, getting up. Are we going to run? Are we clear to run for it? There are still a few stragglers. Give it a minute. Theseus grabbed Tom's hand in preparation to run. Tom's choice not to complain this time, knowing that speed was of the essence. Now, Theseus announced, taking off in a sprint. Tom let Theseus guide him, easily keeping up with his winged twin. Luckily, they made it to the wall without incident. Theseus let go of Tom's hand. I'll pull you up in a second, he reassured. Tom heard Theseus' wings flap, felt a sudden wind gust across his face. Here, hand me your cane, came the voice from above. You'll need both hands for this. Tom passed over the cane and in another moment felt two hands grab his own and start pulling him up. He braced his feet against the wall to give extra leverage as Theseus slowly hoisted him up. As he climbed, there were more flapping sounds, more wind. Theseus was likely using his wings to help balance himself as he lifted. Suddenly there was shooting in the distance, and Tom heard another bang, and just found himself showered in more debris. Jesus fuck, he exclaimed in surprise. Yeah, they see us, Theseus confirmed. Just a bit farther, you're nearly there. Tom got his hands over the top of the wall, and it was quick work to get the rest of them over. The two dropped to the ground on the other side not a moment too soon, as almost instantly there were more sounds of projectiles hitting where they had just vacated. Theseus pushed the cane back into Tom's right hand and grabbed his left. We're running for it, was all the explanation Tom got before Theseus again pulled him along in a sprint. As he ran, he hoped to himself that this wasn't going to become a regular occurrence. Okay, another person. Tommy Innit was glad to be home. Planetary Security had announced an emergency curfew for his city and the surrounding area while he was at work and nearly had to sprint home to get back in time. He would have been home hours ago, but his boss had offered him extra hours at the end of his shift, and, well, he needed the money. Well, need was relevant. He wasn't in debt or behind on bills or anything. In fact, over the years, he managed to save up a non-insignificant amount. Nevertheless, he had to keep earning if he ever wanted to get off planet and stay independent. Tommy wasn't sure what his end goal was after getting off planet. He just knew that he needed to get out. Maybe he'd join a crew and live on a ship. Maybe he'd buy his own ship and do odd jobs to pay for fuel and supplies. Maybe he'd get passage to his species' homeworld and start a new life there. Whether he'd end up staying or not was definitely on his bucket list to see it with his own 4 eyes. He had no hope or interest in finding any family there, though. Whoever had dumped him here as a child didn't want him, and he had survived all his life without support. Despite that, it would be nice to have the company of other of his species for the first time in his life. Would he have learned Artanian first, or would common suffice? One of the many downsides of growing up in a street on a planet like this is that you rarely know any other language than common. Learning his species' homeworld language was another dream of his. Tommy broke out of his daydream and stepped farther into his small apartment. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was warm, kept the rain out, and it's been a sturdy home for the last 2 years. His landlord didn't give a star spot about anything as long as Tommy paid on time, which was why he was able to get it when he was barely 14. He flipped on his Halo screen and turned to the news in hopes of finding out what the sudden curfew was for. It was an old model. He had gotten it from a scrapyard for practically nothing and fixed it. just like his apartment, and most of the things he owned wasn't fancy, but it worked. There wasn't much reason to splurge on items when he was trying to leave the world, end up most of it being resold anyway. He left the halo on the background as he checked his food storage cabinet to decide what to make. He spotted several containers of vegetable matter that were neatly out and the leftover meat from the previous night. Tommy figured the best thing to use this all up would be a stew. Tommy's cooking skills were mainly born from trial and error, having had no one to teach him. Nevertheless, he felt he had become fairly competent for someone with these limitations. He placed a pot on his cooker and prepared the ingredients. While the water heated up, right as he was about to add the first ingredients, there was a crash outside his back door. Boom! I don't know. Though it was more of an old emergency exit from where the building had a different purpose with a proper back door. He was the only tenant who had one, and it was useful when he wanted to get in or out without going through the main building for whatever reason. Only right now, someone was outside. Oh no. Tommy hoped it was nothing, but he knew better than to take the chance. Anyone out after a curfew was either oblivious or up to something. He was worried that they might try to break the door to get inside his apartment. He grabbed a rod that sat nearby and crept to the door. The rod was for playing jodel? Is that a space thing? The rod was for playing Jotol. Jotol. I'm just saying Jotol, guys. Sorry if I'm dyslexic. The rod was for playing Joltar, but it had always served as a pretty good effective, legal to carry around, and somewhat non-suspicious weapon for him. As he reached the door, Tommy could hear a voice from the other side. He took a deep breath. Hopefully he could scare away whoever was on the other side without incident. If not, well, you didn't survive as a street kid without knowing how to defend yourself with an improv weapon. It also helped that he usually had more limbs to work with than any other opponents he faced. He threw the door open and began to complain, raising the Jotol rod threateningly with his upper set of arms. Oi, I don't appreciate people skulking around my... He spotted the pair of individuals on the other side and froze in shock. They looked like him. Nah, really? At the same time, they weren't completely like him. Having only 2 arms and 2 eyes, skin closer to pink than his red, and one even having a massive set of gold wings on their back. Nevertheless, the number of eyes, notwithstanding their faces, were identical to his own in every other way he could see. The one with wings looked shocked at his appearance, while the other just looked startled and confused. The winged one said something to his companion in a language Tommy didn't know. His face also twisted into one of surprise. They talked back and forth between themselves in the unknown language for a minute before Tommy broke out of his stupor. What in the stars? Who are you? He asked, keeping the rod raised above his head while bracing his other arms in over his body protectively. The winged one put his hand in front of him in what was either a defensive or pleading motion and said something that sounded like more gibberish. Tommy lowered his weapon slightly. "I don't speak your language. Do you know any common?" Okay, I'm just imagining him saying that. "I don't speak your language. Do you know common?" That would be funny. The two stared at him, uncomprehending. If they didn't understand common, they had to be from off-planet. If they were tourists, they were woefully unprepared. So perhaps someone abandoned them here? That didn't explain why they looked like him, though. He squashed down hope that they were somehow family. The universe wasn't that kind. He gave them another look over. He didn't recognize what species they were. The winged one reminded him of an aviar, but he had no other common traits besides the wings. The non-winged one carried a cane in one of his hands. Perhaps he was injured? Or it was an improvised weapon. Improvised. Or it was an improv weapon. Just say that. Similar to his own. He then noticed that the winged one had a blaster in plain view, in a holster on his hip. He was either very confident or very stupid. This made Tommy nervous at first, but then he realized that if he were going to pull it out, he probably would have done it when he had first threatened them with the rod. The two stared, talking incomprehensibly again, making hand gestures and trying to explain something across the language barrier. He was about to interrupt them again when suddenly heard Tommy amongst the gibberish. He lowered his weapon to his side in surprise. "How do you know my name?" They could not be family. He did not need family. "You sure about that? Because a little bit ago you were hoping, buddy." The winged one looked triumphant at finally getting a positive reaction from him, saying something to his wingless companion, then pointed at Tommy, looking him in the face and then saying more gibberish, but again, it again distinctly ended in his name. Tommy kept to himself as much as possible. He barely associated with anyone, much less anyone with off-world connections. But how did these two know who he was? Whoever they were in trouble. Dumped here or not, the planet ate newcomers alive. And that's not to mention that they didn't even speak common. They also appeared to have no idea about the curfew. Tommy realized that he wasn't going to get any answers if these two got themselves killed or arrested. So he made a choice. It had nothing to do with the hope blooming in his chest. It didn't, guys. It didn't. Chad, what are you talking about? Tommy held the door open with his left arm and gestured for the two to enter with his right. The winged one looked surprised, while the other's expression did not change. Tommy realized that it was only the winged one reacting to what he did at first. He watched as the winged one said something to his friend and the other reacted positively. Why did he have to tell his friend things before he reacted? Could he not see him? Tommy glanced again at the cane the wingless one carried and started putting the pieces together. Time was of the essence, though, so he again gestured for them to enter. "If you're going to come in, hurry up. It won't end well for any of us if we get caught out here." He tried to look around and sound urgent. Thankfully, they seemed to get the point The winged one said something to his companion and headed inside. The other followed him, confirming some of Tommy's suspicions by moving his cane back and forth in front of him. Tommy followed them and shut the door. The winged one appeared, fascinated by his hollow screen, excitedly chattering to his friend while watching the newscast with great interest. The two talked back and forth for a while. Then the winged one sat down on his couch and continued staring at the hollow, mesmerized. He kept up a running commentary as his friend sat down next to him. Tommy let out a breath. They were keeping themselves entertained, at least. Hopefully they'd stay out of trouble until he could figure out how to communicate with them. For now, though, he was hungry. He turned back and headed into the kitchen when official announcement. Oh, wait, I gotta put on my announcement voice, okay? Official announcement. Please stand by. Official announcement. Please stand by. The hollow switched to a standby screen. Tommy turned back and hurried over, sitting in a chair. With any luck, this would explain the curfew. He shushed his guests and gestured to them to quiet down. The screen switched to a news conference. Leoin in uniform of a planetary security stood behind the podium. At approximately 7.35 cycles. Okay. At approximately 7.35 cycles, she began, there was a security breach at a guarded shipping warehouse at the Allermere sector. The only items we have confirmed as stolen are a blaster from a guard and a prototype translator. There will be a full inquiry on how this occurred. However, this is not the focus of this conference. Based on the witness testimony and surveillance video, we believe the perpetrators. We believed the perpetrators to be human. Tommy froze. Humans? Not only on his planet, but only one sector over? Everyone knew that humans were dangerous creatures. They had jaws strong enough to bite through small appendages. They could survive even after losing limbs. Some even said that they could take down whole ship crews single-handedly. Moreover, they could survive insanely wide a range of conditions due to their home planet being a Class 1 death world. Was someone stupid enough to capture a human, then came to regret it and dumped it? Tommy shuddered. He wasn't even sure what a human looked like, so how could he know to avoid one? Every depiction he'd ever seen or heard was different. The Leoin continued, shaking out her mane. We have called a mandatory curfew for the areas that they could have plausibly reached, and we are delegating working to find and capture them for the safety of the public. In the meantime, we recommend that you take sensible precautions not to put yourself at risk of encountering one. We have put together a full-body reader of what they look like. If you see them, do not approach them under any circumstances. Call your local authorities instead. On the screen appeared two very similar and very familiar-looking individuals. Tommy stared, eyes one wide in shock. The two humans on hollow screen looked identical to the aliens currently sitting on his couch. The winged human looked just as shocked as Tommy felt and stared frantically, whispering to his friend. The conference continued, but it faded into background for Tommy as his mind whirled. He had 2 humans in his house, 2 dangerous creatures that would tear him apart if given a chance. But that didn't seem right. They had already had plenty of chance to attack him. They didn't even raise the weapon they had against him, even when he had directly threatened them with a joint troll rod. This wasn't adding up. Their behavior didn't match anything he'd ever learned about humans. If only he could communicate with them. Wait, didn't that Luane say that they had stolen a translator? Then why weren't they using it? Did they not know how it worked? Or he glanced over and spotted the cane the wingless human was holding. Maybe they didn't know it was a translator at all. He stood, walked over to the humans, then pointed at the cane. "Hand me that," he asked. The human looked confused and gestured at the cane. He gestured at the cane some more. "Hand me that. I have an idea." The human talked to each other for a minute before the wingless one held it up. Tommy looked it over. It took him a minute, but he finally found a switch hidden near the handle and flipped it. "Do you understand me?" he asked. The human nearly jumped a foot in the air. "The fuck? You speak English?" the wingless one shouted in perfect common. Tommy could have collapsed with relief. "No, I don't. This is a normal cane." "This isn't a normal cane. It's a translator. Probably the best thing you could have grabbed." He handed it back to the wingless one. Translator or not, he did appear to be using it to get around, and it would work no matter who was holding it. Now that we fixed the communication problem, would you mind letting me know what in the blazing stars is going on here? Oh my gosh, my voice got kind of loud right there. I'm really hoping I don't wake anybody up. Anyway, well, that was chapter 3. Congratulations, world. It is now 4 in the morning and I have school tomorrow. I'm dead, guys. Oh no. Chat, I'm not it. Okay. But yeah, new character. We have Tommy 3. Well, we currently have Tom, Decius, and Tommy. But we're getting into this. Yeah. I'm going to really try to do more. Okay, guys. But that's all the time I have for today, because I have to go to bed. But I'm going to try to upload this, like, right now. And then I'm going to go to bed. Okay. And again, this is How to Live With Yourself, a guide by Passion About Ponies. Chapter 3. Who is an alien to who? That's actually a really good question. Anyway, bye-bye.